Welcome to the Band of Brothers podcast. I'm here today with a good old friend, Dave Schrubb. How you doing, Davey?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Awesome. It's good to have you here, man. Thanks for being willing to share your story with other brothers and other people in recovery. We appreciate it.
Of course.
So let's start at the beginning. Like, tell me the first time you ever used any mind-altering substance. How old were you?
So I was kind of a late bloomer, I guess, compared to some. I was like 20, almost 23, I think, when I had my first drink.
Wow.
Yeah. Which, looking back, I'm shocked I lived that long
Yeah.
to make it to the drink because I was always quite unhappy, from a very young age. And um,
So you didn't drink, you didn't smoke any weed, you didn't do anything in high school.
no, and I think a big part of that is just like I was such a loner. Like I just, I had maybe one or two friends and they didn't do it. So that's probably why I never did it,
Okay.
growing up in high school. So
So what did you use the first time you used anything?
so it was a beer. I Some friends took me out. It was this like really crappy like college bar. It was
Mhm.
crowded and loud. Um, yeah, I think it was a Bud Light maybe. And uh like I will never forget the feeling. That first drink was just um I mean, I used to say it was a spiritual experience because it was just like everything kind of came together. And I felt complete and comfortable in my own skin. Um, but now I'm convinced that like part of the cunningness of my alcoholism is like uh the power of it is like it can like almost it copies what that a spiritual experience is like it comes really close. So like man, but it was like it opened up my world, that first drink.
Like, explain that. Like, so you were shy growing up? You were a little, do you have a lot of
Ve-
anxiety or depression or anything like that, or what?
yeah. So uh so I was sexually abused as a child, which was never my family didn't know about it, my parents didn't know about it, and so it was never addressed. And on top of that too, it's just my nature. I'm quiet. I like to be by myself. It's like, and I hated school. I had so much anxiety, like going and being around other people. And I used to, at a very young age, just start skipping school. And like, because I hated being around other people. And yeah, very, very shy. Very, very, I just kept to myself a lot. Um, so when I started to drink, it was just like I could speak to people, I could talk to girls. Um, I always liked art, and it's like I thought it got my creative juices flowing. And I was like, oh, this is amazing. Like it was like that missing puzzle piece in my life was put into place when I started drinking. And I loved it at first. It was so much fun at
Mhm.
first, you know.
Right, right.
Uh, so yeah, I just thought I had arrived. This was it. And
So,
I like depression is still a big part of my life, and I didn't know that. Um, it's been as I've gotten older, I've been exposed to other people who also deal with depression. Like I didn't realize that's what I was dealing with at a young age either. My family, God bless them, they just didn't know what to do with me, and they didn't
mhm.
know that's what it was. And growing up in a very religious home, it was just like, well, you pray about it, you go to church, and it's like I tried doing those things and I still was miserable.
Yeah.
So,
So at 23, where were you? What were you doing when you first drank? Were you at work or
so I had, to everyone's surprise, I'd served the LDS mission. I went a little bit later. I was almost 21. So it was just a few months after getting back from a mission, and I was working. This was in South Dakota. Rapid City is where I grew up. And
I didn't know that.
yeah, yeah. So
Wow.
I was there. I was working.
I got
I don't know.
sober
I
in
didn't.
Sioux Falls, South Dakota.
What's that?
My family's from South Dakota. I grew up in Minnesota. I got sober in Sioux Falls.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Well, you and
Yeah.
your brothers, don't you hunt out there quite a bit? Or am I
Yeah.
thinking of somebody else?
No, you're right, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
We go up to Aberdeen every year and hunt. My grandpa got some land up there. And yeah, so I love South Dakota. I had a hard time moving to Utah. I was 2.5 years sober and I love South Dakota. I didn't want to leave, but looking
Yeah.
back, I'm glad I did now. But anyway, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. No, no, I didn't know. That's cool. Yeah. So I was in Rapid City. I was working. I was a manager at a movie theater. Um, and it's like I didn't really have any purpose. It's like I did my mission, and which was it was hard. It was really hard. But I did it, and I got back, and I just
Where did
um,
you serve?
Sacramento, California,
Wow. Okay.
served from '02 to '04,
Okay.
so it's been a minute. Um, but I started getting depressed, like really depressed again, and um, there was this part of me that's just like, I tried doing the God thing. I tried giving my life up to God, and I was still suffering, and I didn't understand that. And not a ton of LDS people out there, and so most of my friends, were just regular folks, and they drank, and it seemed to make them happy. And I just it was somebody I was working with, and I was like, hey, I want to try it. Will you take me
Mhm.
somewhere? And he's like, yeah, yeah. And so they took me out, and that's how I experienced my that's how I began my love affair with alcohol and drugs.
Yeah. So how did that
Um, I remember some of the first few times I drank, like the people I were with, they're like, "You drink like a fish," and um, I thought that was a compliment. But it wasn't every day, but it pretty quickly uh became like every weekend. Um, and uh, my boss, looking back now, like total alcoholic, and so like
Yeah.
in between like the times that we'd show movies is like there was a bar across the street, great bar, and we'd go over there, and we'd have a couple drinks and we'd go back to work and then we'd do it again. And so it was just easy to do. And again, I loved the way it made me feel. And so pretty quickly it was like I was starting to drink it on the job. Um, I mean, I'd actually bring it to the theater and drink it. And it wasn't a big issue because it was like I learned later, like my boss was like, you know, uh, doing drugs upstairs and like all this stuff. So I was like, it was just kind of like the perfect place to for my alcoholism to like, really boom and
Yeah.
grow. Um, so that I did that for probably a year and a half. I functioned. I mean, I had a few experiences where um, I drank a lot, super hungover, or I would um I'd wake up in places I wasn't sure where I was at, but I always showed up for work the next day, and I always, I guess, did the things that you're supposed to do to kind of function as a human being. And so I didn't really see um, or recognize like what it was becoming at the time. Um, and then finally, it was like uh, this was probably a couple years into it where it was just like, I was drinking almost every day and things weren't well. Like I just, it's like I get into a relationship and it wouldn't go well. Family wouldn't go well. I mean, just and so at that time, I had a couple brothers that were living in Utah, and they're like, "Well, why don't you come out?" And in my mind, it was like if I could get away from, uh, I guess the my friends and what I was used to, like I could quit drinking that way. And so I came out to Utah in like 2000, it was 8 or 9.
Did you have
And
family out here or who was out here?
Yeah, at the time I had two brothers that were living out here.
That's
The
funny,
one
dude.
I went to,
I moved out here from South Dakota, and my two brothers
oh yeah,
were living
yeah.
here. That's funny.
And like, again, a big reason I came out was just like, because I kind of sensed my drinking was getting out of control and I wanted to do something different. I started going to school at Salt Lake Community College at the time. I was studying film, used to be really big into movies and stuff like that. And was living with my brother in Tooele. And I'd been inactive from church too, it's not very compatible when you're, drinking and doing drugs. And I couldn't do it. I couldn't go to church on Sunday. I didn't see the point. And so when I came to Utah, I started going to church again. And, I stayed sober for about a year, I think it was. I was doing the religion thing. Uh, and then like how I didn't understand what alcoholism was. And
Mhm.
so, I wasn't great at being spiritually fit. And so it's like things started getting hard again. And I just remember like I'm just gonna drink, because that gives me relief. And
Mhm.
it was so it's funny now, but like the first I came home from school, I picked up I think it was like a six pack, and about halfway through I was like I'm going to the bar. So I went to some dumpy bar in Tooele, and I don't remember most of that night other than getting pulled over. It was my first time I'd ever been in trouble with the law. I got a DUI. And that kind of set everything into motion of because my brother had young kids and he's like, you can't stay here anymore. So he asked me to leave. And I moved out with my other brother who's a little more free spirit, I guess. Like he didn't care that I drank. He wasn't into religion or anything. And from there just it went downhill. Like I dropped out of school. I couldn't get a job. And when I did, I'd lose it really quick because the drinking. Um, and he was living with a girlfriend, and I was stealing her pills. Um, and they finally found out. It's like, I'd sneak a few here and there, and then finally I was taking just like half the bottle. It's like, of course they're gonna find out. And so when that all kind of you know, came to a head, is when my family's like, you need to get some help for this. And um, my parents found the ranch, Ren'ais'sance Ranch, and they're like, do you want to go to treatment? And at the time, I absolutely did not. Like, I think it was when I went through, I think it was 90 days, and that seemed
How
like,
old were you?
uh, so this was 2012, so I think I was 31.
Okay. And
I think
what? And
or I just turned,
you were using pills and drinking?
yeah, yeah. And I mean, alcohol's my baby, but over the years, like I'd done pain pills and pot. Um, but alcohol, man, I just loved alcohol.
Hmm.
And yeah, so the opportunity to go get treatment was there. And uh, it's so funny because like I didn't want to do it. I had legal issues with my DUI because I didn't take care of that. I just thought it'd go away if I avoided everything. It doesn't.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and I remember I was in my bedroom. I was drunk, and I was like halfway off my bed, like just kind of like laying there. And I just had this thought, like, well, it wasn't my thought. It was God now that I look back on it. It's like, if you don't go do this, if you don't go to treatment, like nothing's ever going to change. And
Right.
so I went.
So what, I mean, did you feel like you'd hit your bottom, like that was it, or what? I mean, that's a pretty cool experience.
Um, yeah, yeah. I mean, I didn't like a bottom at that time. Like, I had no idea what that meant. I
Right.
just knew I, I felt stuck. Like I wasn't going anywhere. Things were only getting worse. Um, all I was doing was drinking. And because like I'd heard of AA before that, but I had no idea what anything or what that was about at all, the steps or anything like that. And so yeah, I just had that as a God thought, like you need to do this. Um,
Was this before or after your family said you need help?
this was after
Okay.
because I was like my family's super codependent. And because they were threatening me, we're gonna kick you out, but like they probably wouldn't have. Looking back, like, you know, God bless my parents, but like they will love me to death. They will,
Mhm.
they'll do anything and everything and they mean well, but like, my disease will take advantage of that, take me to the grave. But um so yeah, I went to treatment in 2012 at the ranch.
So what was that? What was your first week or so like? You remember?
I don't remember my first week. I went to detox for almost a week and they pumped me up with a lot of stuff. So the first week, like I just remember getting hugged a lot by random men I didn't know and people telling me they loved me and like detoxing a little bit, detoxing from detoxing, wet the bed a few times at the ranch, which was a lot of fun. Um, and yeah, it was I remember when I kind of came to, it was just like I was crazy, It's like I didn't have drugs and alcohol to numb myself, and like all these feelings were coming up, and um, I mean, I wanted to bolt, and I almost did. Uh, I think it was about 2 weeks in. It was a Friday night. They'd taken us to an AA meeting. Got back, and they were giving everybody meds, and I was just like, I can't do this anymore. I got to get out of here. And so they let me make some phone calls, but my cell phone was dead, and I didn't have a charger and the only number I knew was my parents, and they were in South Dakota at the time, and they actually picked up, but they're just like, we don't know what to tell you, and I knew um, the only thing that kept me there that night is I knew if I left, I wouldn't be able to get alcohol before that night. Like there was no way I was gonna be able to do it, and
Hmm.
so looking back that was a form of surrendering for me. Like I was like, okay, I'll crash here, and then I'm gone in the morning. And I woke up the next morning, and it was like I was a totally different person.
Hmm.
Like I didn't want to leave. I didn't want to get drunk. Um, it was it was a miracle to me. I couldn't believe it. I just felt like a totally different person. And that was the beginning for me that like I started to feel some hope. I started to feel like, okay, maybe I don't have to go back to what I'm used to. And I mean, the rest of my stay at the ranch was amazing. It was awesome. I mean, I was so grateful for the time that I had there.
So what was your experience like with the guys you were in treatment with?
I mean, it was awesome. I felt so lucky looking back because I worked at the ranch for a few years, when I
Hmm.
got sober and because there's some group of guys like they're just so full of BS. It's like they don't call each other out, they co-sign and like I was just really fortunate with the group of guys like everybody was kind of in your face with telling you the truth, which was the approach I needed. I didn't need anyone to coddle me. I didn't need anyone to tell me like it's gonna be okay. I mean, and people did tell me it was gonna be okay, but they told me the truth.
Hmm.
And sometimes that hurt my feelings. But I think what I loved about it though is like because I would lash out sometimes, like, you don't know me. That was like my favorite line. You don't know me. But then they would stick around, like they'd sit with me in my pain. They'd sit with me in
Hmm.
my anger. And I became really close with a handful of guys in there. A few of us went to sober living afterwards. it's like, so we lived together there. We lived at meetings together. So I just felt really fortunate with the group of guys that I went through. Um, it was just who I needed at the time, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. So what was the funniest thing that happened to you in treatment without using names, especially if I'm part of it? I'm probably not, but
Oh, the funniest. Oh shoot, I don't know. Um, I mean, I don't know. I can't think of anything specific, but I do just remember like sitting around and like laughing from the belly, you know, like real laughter, real, and it wasn't like at the expense of anybody else. It wasn't, I don't know, I hadn't experienced that in so long, you
mhm.
know. Um, Especially like the last week I was in treatment because they took us camping. Um, and just sitting around the fireplace every night and just laughing, like crying, laughing, and like being 100% sober and comfortable in my own skin. And man, it was awesome. It was awesome.
That's great. So you get out. What do you do?
So I
You went to
did,
aftercare. I'm pretty sure, right?
yep, yeah, I basically did everything I didn't want to do. You know, I went to sober living. You know, I wanted to go back living with my brother. I did aftercare. Um, you know, I got a sponsor, I got a home group. I did everything that, you know, is recommended and suggested to do in recovery. Um, you know, I didn't want to do it, but you know, I had that gift of desperation where it's like, just tell me what to do, even though I don't
Right.
want to do it, I'll do it because I didn't want to go back to the way I was living, the way I was feeling. And I finished aftercare, and that was a huge deal for me because like I'm a quitter. I like to run when things get hard.
Hmm.
Um, you know, so that really sent a message to my disease, like, you know, I can do stuff and I can finish things. Um, and so I did that. Um, at that time I think I was living up in Salt Lake and you know, I had a couple really terrible jobs and working in warehouses and stuff like that. And I loved like my experience at the ranch was great. So I was like, I want to work in treatment. And so I had a job up there at a Odyssey house doing nights. And that kind of got me into the like, this is what I would like to do. And I think I was probably a year and a half, maybe 2 years sober when the opportunity to work at the ranch opened up. And um, so I did that. I think I worked there for like 3 or 4 years, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah.
Um, you know, and I don't know if you want to talk about it, but I've had a handful of relapses since then. So
Well, it's up to you, bud. We can talk about whatever you want to talk about.
yeah, I was 2017. I was working at the ranch. I was house manager there, and I was coming up on 5 years of sobriety, and I was miserable. Um, I had a really close friend who went through treatment with me who had relapsed, and I got way too involved in that, trying to fix everything. Um, my depression was out of control and I wasn't seeking outside help for that. And I don't know, working in treatment is like I had this pride thing where it's like I can't tell people that I'm struggling because I'm supposed to be an example, whatever that
Mhm.
means. You know, I'm supposed to be like a shining example of recovery. And so I didn't tell anybody. And I was going home and I'd be driving home from work and I just praying that my car would like lose control and somebody would crash into me and kill me, and laying in bed every night just like bawling my eyes out. Um,
Mm.
and so it was like course I drank, it's I'm an alcoholic. And that's one thing I've learned over the years. Like if it doesn't matter like how done I am with drinking, if I'm in pain for too long and I don't have relief, especially spiritual relief, like I will pick up again. I don't even
Mhm.
I don't even there have been times I've relapsed, like I don't even want to drink. But it's what I when I'm in enough pain for long enough, I will drink.
Yeah.
It's just what I do, it's
Do
part
you
of my
remember
disease.
do you remember the process when you first relapse, like the decision, once the decision was made, like once you, I'm sure we all go through a process of talking ourselves into it, and then rationalizing and just whatever. Do you remember that process and how that went?
Yeah, it, it's kind of embarrassing, but like my relapse started with that tea or whatever kombucha. Have you heard of
Yeah,
that?
yeah.
Because there's like a tiny sliver of supposed like alcohol because it's a fermented. And so
Mhm.
like I was buying like 20 of those and drinking. I think I'd feel
You're
it,
a
I
healthy
think I
drunk,
feel,
dude. You're a healthy drunk.
I think I feel buzzed. Like, I was so desperate for relief. And so it started with that. And then it was like, well, non-alcoholic beer has a sliver of alcohol. Like, why don't I just drink that? And then I bought that. And then the same day, it was just like, what am I doing? Like, I just need to get drunk.
Mhm.
And so, I mean, it was a pretty quick process when I finally took the action to like put a substance into my body. Um, but it may sound strange, but like looking back, I'm grateful for the relapse because I think I would have killed myself,
Yeah.
the drinking. I mean, it wasn't a permanent relief and it wasn't a great way to get relief, but I think it saved me, until I could get to a
I've
place.
experienced that. I think it keeps the gun out of our mouth, if just
Yeah.
for a moment, if we're not dealing with the mental health side, which most people in addiction have that a little bit here or there, whether it's huge diagnosis or whether it's just seasonal depression or whatever it might be. I think and that's usually in recovery is, and especially when you're working in the field, is you stop kind of doing your own recovery because you're around it all day. Did that happen to you? Like, were you still going to your home group? Did you still have were you still as active in recovery for you, not at the ranch?
Um, so that time, like, because I had moved from Salt Lake down to, I think I was in Draper at the time, and so like I wasn't super connected with my sponsor. So that part was definitely lacking. I was going to a ton of meetings at the time, but I wasn't, and I was kind of being honest.
Yeah.
It was like because like I wear my I think I'm like I've got a good poker face. I don't. It's like when I'm struggling, people know I'm struggling, and so it's like I would share a little, but not to the depths of like how much pain I was really in. And so, in my mind, it's like, well, I'm doing meetings, they're not working,
Mhm.
which just kind of fed that. Well, get drunk, that works. That works. Um, so I mean, I was active, at least on the surface, and doing the recovery stuff. So,
Right. So how long did your relapse last?
um, so that one, uh, I, because I think the day I drank, like, I didn't show up to work. I can't do that, So it's like, I was honest right away. And so it was like in a matter of days, I lost my job. I was living with another alcoholic and he's like, you can't stay here. Um, and so it was like a matter of 2 or 3 days. And I wanted to die. So I was in a psych ward for a few days. And I got out and a buddy of mine was going to visit his wife in California. She was working out there. And he's like, "Hey, do you want to come with?" Somebody I was really close to, who I went through treatment with. And I was like, "Sure." And we got out there to California, and like the first day, um, I don't even know where in California we were, and I just like we were in a trailer park, and I walked somewhere and I bought alcohol, and I started drinking again. Um, and that what a nightmare that was. But on the way back to Utah, because at the time was Therapia, I think is the name of the
Yeah. Yeah.
treatment center down St. George, and he's like, "I'm dropping you off there," and I was just like, "Okay," and so I went there. I think I was there for like a month, um, and like I really tried, but looking back, it's like I wasn't done. I wasn't done. Um, And so I did their aftercare thing. I moved down there after treatment. And I think I stayed sober for like 4 or 5 months. And then I started drinking again. Um, so my relapses are like, I don't know, they're not very long, but, I've had a handful of them since then. I came back up to Utah County a couple of years later, got sober for like a year. I was back at the ranch again, working nights.
Oh,
Um,
cool.
Yeah, I think I stayed sober about a year that time, and then I don't know. For me, it's like and I was taught this the day I walked into AA. It's like it's a threefold disease: body, mind, and spirit. And like the spirit part, to me, is the most important. But like I can't neglect the mental health part for me.
Yeah.
And that's what I do because I start feeling good, and it's like I don't need to take my medication. I don't need to see my therapist or and I've just learned through a lot of painful experiences, like, that's just my reality. That's something I have to stay on top of, just like I have to stay on top of my spiritual health, is my
Right.
mental health. Because I think that's where a lot of the relapses started for me, is like I'd get caught in the depression, that negative thinking, and like, so yeah.
So at what point did you realize, man, I've got to start dealing with this mental health thing? When did that really ring true to you? When did it hit home?
I mean, looking back over the years, like I think God's been trying to tell me that for a while. Um, but it was last year. I'd been sober a little over 2 years, and I had a great job that I loved, and things were going really well. Um, but again, I was neglecting my mental health, and I was experiencing uh, a level of anxiety, and like I couldn't get out of bed. And so I
Mm.
I I ultimately lost my job because of that. And then I drank because it's like, well, I'm an alcoholic. It's what I do. Um, I don't know, and it just that whole experience really drilled into me. It's like, um, I have to stay on top of that. I have to like,
Mhm.
um, and it's hard. But like, for those of us who deal with, you know, the depression, like when you're in it, it's so hard to take action. Um, but I've learned that um, I have to watch out for it, because if I reach that point, I don't know, nothing but God's going to keep me from drinking. That level
Mhm.
of depression. If I have X amount of days where I don't take action, like I'm going to get to that point where I'm beyond human aid to get help for the mental health stuff. So um, yeah, every day I take action to deal with that. So.
So, yeah, tell me a little bit about what you do for yourself, mental health wise, if you don't mind.
What I do, is that what you asked?
Yeah. Yeah. How do you, what's your new sobriety date?
It is October 20th of 2023. So,
Congratulations.
thank you, thank you. So, coming up on 6 months. Um, I see a therapist regularly. Um, I don't switch therapists every few months like I used to. And I've been fortunate there, finding somebody I really connect with. I see a doctor. Um, and right now I'm currently taking a couple medications. And I've been exposed to things that are a little more like I did this treatment called TMS. Um, it's transcranial magnetic stimulation, and that really did something for me, something different that I'd never tried before. And
Okay.
so with the mental health stuff, I'm trying to be a little more open-minded, to different things. Where in the past it was like I just take medication for it, and hope that that fixes everything. Um, so yeah.
So what else are you doing to care for yourself?
Um, like I love the outdoors. I'm not a big exercise guy, but like I love to walk. I love to hike. Um, just being outside and like getting sunshine is really big for me. Um, and then there's
Little
the
vitamin
obvious.
D, little vitamin D is always good.
Yes, yes. Um, then there's the obvious things like, I'm super active in AA right now. I have a home group. I have a couple service positions. I have a sponsor who knows he's my sponsor. I'm up to date with actually working the steps again with them. Um, and just, doing the things that I learned back in the ranch and, when I first came into AA. So,
So how are you feeling?
uh, good most of the time, obviously things are not perfect. I still have kind of down days, but which I think is just that's just life. But it's nothing like it used to be. Like, I can get out of bed every day. I do get out of bed every day. And I experience hope a majority of the time. Um, you know, especially with a lot of relapses, like, that's been a struggle for me. It's just like I had my chance at recovery. I had my chance at a good life,
Mhm.
and I've screwed it up again and again and again. It's my belief today, my experience today that it's never too late. Like the power of my God is greater than any of my problems, is greater than any of my fears. It's like I'm 42, excuse me, I'm 42 years old. And sometimes I fall into this pit of thinking it's like, oh man, I don't have a career, I don't have a family, uh, I don't have a house, and it's like I don't know, none of that matters, because today I feel connected to God, and I know He's going to take care of me, and I don't know what that looks like necessarily, but I just have hope that everything's going to be fine. I'm going to be okay, as long as I stay close to Him and close to AA and the things that are working in my life.
That's awesome, dude. So what do you think were the biggest reasons for your relapses? What could, I know we don't want to give advice, but what part of your experience could help somebody? Was it the neglect of mental health? Was it neglect of, because it sounds like some of the times before you relapse, you were going to a lot of meetings. You were kind of checking the boxes, so to speak. What do you think was missing?
I mean, definitely there was a neglect of my mental health. It was like it was a problem I was aware of, and I wasn't doing anything about it. Um, but I think ultimately it was like it was my lack of honesty, um, and how I was really feeling. I was my unwillingness to like really open up to anybody, um,
Mhm.
about how much I was struggling. And maybe I learned this at the ranch, but my alcoholism is a disease of isolation. And if my disease can get me alone, and being dishonest is like such a lonely place to be in my
Mhm.
experience. That isolation comes and it's like, of course I'm gonna drink. So I think it was a combination of the mental health and the lack of honesty. Um, and today, at least so far, in the last 5.5 months, um, I do my best to be honest, and I take action every day. And I know in the past it was like, well, I'll go to a meeting when I feel like going to a meeting, or I'll call my sponsor, um, when I think it's right time. It's like today, it doesn't matter how I feel, it doesn't matter what I think. I take action every day. Um, so
Well, that's cool, dude. What if you don't mind me asking, what have you dealt with your trauma? Have you dealt with the abuse that you had to endure?
uh yeah. So I've been seeing a therapist pretty regularly. You know, and today, I don't know, because I used to really kind of carry that around, and it was a great excuse to act poorly and be like, oh, well, this happened to me, so I can do whatever I want, basically. Um, and I used to be angry about it. I used to, how could God let this happen to me?
Mhm.
Why wasn't my family there? Why didn't they protect me? And um, I guess the only really proof that I have for myself that I've worked through is like when I think about it. Well, one, I can actually talk about it. I'm not getting angry. I'm not feeling sorry for myself. But like it's just something that happened. It
Mhm.
I don't carry it around. It's not a chip on my shoulder, so to speak. Um,
How old were you when it happened?
it was like 4 or 5,
Wow.
just pretty young. Um, and this may sound strange, but like there's a part of me, and not just that with that trauma, but like a lot of the things throughout my life. And this is because of working the steps. It's like I'm grateful. Like those things have turned into gifts for me because
Mhm.
they ultimately, this bad stuff that happened to me ultimately led me to the drink, which led me to AA, which led me to the steps, which led me to God. And it's like, they were really just things that push me towards God, and
Mhm.
I'm grateful for them. I'm grateful that all the bad stuff, whatever that means, happened because it led me to God. You know,
Yeah,
and having that connection is just like it's amazing. It's amazing.
that's awesome. Well, I think in addictions, abuses and trauma, very high percentage of men and even higher percentage of women have experienced that in their childhood, typically. And so I remember about 4 years into owning the ranch, and I used to do all the assessments. And assessments by nature are kind of mildly accusatory because you're asking somebody, "What did you do? What did you do? What did you do?" And I started understanding trauma a little more, even my own, and I changed that around. And my first question I started asking was, "What happened to you?" And it changed the whole tone of the conversation. And so, if you're out there listening to this and something happened to you, seek professional help. Go talk to somebody that can guide you through the trauma. There's a ton of different trauma interventions that really good therapists use that help us get to it quicker. and get through it and move on and not let that person reperpetrate us every day and bring us down and ruin our lives. So I'm glad you got through that, and nobody deserves that, no, especially a child. Nobody was asking for it. Nobody, was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Like it's just, it's an act of violence, and it's an act of predatory, in a predatory nature. And so anyway, if you're out there and that happened to you, it wasn't your fault. It's not any child's fault. And anyway, what is your, like, what do you do on a daily basis to stay sober? What do your dailies look like?
Um, I mean, the kind of generic textbook answers, but the first thing I do in the morning is I pray. I choose to get on my knees and pray. I don't think you have to do that, but I read uh, a daily reading, daily reflection, a couple books I read from. Um, uh, Music has been kind of a big one for me lately. Helps me to meditate. Um, and right now, I go to a meeting probably every day, and because I want to, not because I feel like I have to. I just get a lot of
Mhm.
joy going to meetings and that community there. And then at night I thank God for the day, and I just do it all over again the next day, and like I said, I'm working with a sponsor um, and stuff like that. So yeah, that's what I do, and it's working.
That's awesome, dude. That's awesome. So where are you living? Well, maybe we don't. You don't need to say that, but
You want
You're
to send me
working.
gifts? This is my address.
You're working, right?
No, so I've been out of work for a few months now, which is,
Have you?
yeah, it's been a little frustrating. But it's wild age. Like when I was let go of my job late last year, like they gave me a severance check, which has never happened,
Mhm.
And while I've been looking for work, like for once in my life, I qualified for unemployment, and so it's like I'm being taken care of, my bills are being taken care of, and um, which I'm really grateful for, you know.
Yeah. What are you
Uh,
looking for?
uh, so my last job, I was working in a shop. I was a machine operator, and I really liked it. It was a lot of fun. I'd never done anything like it before, and so I've been applying there at different places. So haven't had a lot of luck, but that's kind of where I'm looking right now. So
But you live in Utah, right? You live in Salt Lake area?
yeah, I'm down kind of Provo Orem area.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah,
If anybody's listening and they're in that area and they've got a good job, give us a call.
yeah,
Dave's a great, not, co-worker is probably a better way of putting it. And well, dude, thanks for coming on and sharing your story and all that. I know it's not easy a lot, and you told me before, like, hey, I'm used to sharing 4 minutes in a meeting, but 45 minutes, and it can be a little daunting. But I know your story has helped people, and on more of a personal, I had the opportunity to work with Dave for maybe just 2 years, probably, but he's just one of those guys, just with this big, massive heart. He's one of those guys that's all in, and no matter what you ask, he's just there. He's all in. He's not complaining, and he's just got this huge capacity for love. And dude, you've got a lot of light around you right now, and I can see it in your eyes, and I'm so grateful that that we can talk, and you're still walking around, and I'm still walking around, and just appreciate who you are. And relapses, of course, nobody wants to relapse, guys, but once you do, it becomes part of your recovery. But nobody ever has to use again. And it feels like you're really tied in with God, and that's a big part of your recovery. And so, dude, thanks for coming on. It's been a while, and I'm sure I'll run into you out there in the meeting somewhere. I've been trying to get a little more active in the AA again. And where's your home group? Where are you going?
So my home group, it's a meeting 5:30 p.m. Monday through Friday at the Provo Alano Club. It's called a Coffee Pot and a Resentment. Great
Nice.
meeting.
Yeah, that's a
Um,
great new club. The old Masonic temple.
yeah, yeah. The building itself is pretty neat, but
No, I went
um,
in there. The guy that bought the building had me go look at it before he
oh,
bought it, and I'm like, well, you got to probably get rid of this, and that, but that big room's a cool room,
it
and
is awesome, man. The meetings in there, I mean, a meeting's a meeting, but it's pretty neat.
good.
Thanks so much, H. I love you, man. I'm so grateful for the opportunity to do this, and if anyone out there is struggling or has relapsed, my message is like you can come back. You can come back. There is hope. There's hope, and AA has been the way for me. So I love
Yeah,
you, man. Thanks so much.
I love you too, buddy. Take care, Shrubby.